bent. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first. Thank you so much for joining us again on this wonderful Monday. So, complaining always ends up in one of two ways. There's either complaining, wah, I didn't get my way, and most adults will look at you and say, grow up. This happens in sports a lot. It normally happens primarily with referees and officiating in sports. The majority of times a certain fan or a fan base complains about officiating for an individual game or a moment. There's multitude, too many to count, and it's normally because they feel like their team got screwed. That's how most complaining ends up being broken down. You're complaining, you're whining, grow up, get over it. Then there comes to a point where as a community or as a society or a large enough group of people start to go, hey, we're seeing something wrong. We are complaining because this is wrong and this is ruining what we have invested in, whether it is time, money, emotional attachment, and we all collectively say, hey, we're on a different step from complaining. We're notifying you of why this is so wrong and how wrong this is. And in the NFL, right now, to me, that is happening with officiating. And let me be very clear here before I go too deep. The NFL is too big to fail, obviously. But I've spoke about this over the last couple weeks. The NFL does have a few problems on the horizon. The NFL has a problem with a lot of its ratings, similar to music, being held in the top tier percentage of their acts or their teams. Just because the Chiefs get good ratings or the Ravens get good ratings or the Lions or the Rams does not help you when you've got to put on, even internationally, Giants, Panthers. When you have to put on some of these Raider games that are getting low numbers, or some of these Saints games that are getting low numbers, or the Jaguars that are getting low numbers. The other problem, this is the problem the NFL has had before, is their officiating. Again, a lot of complaining is wah, I feel like my team got screwed. Except there's a precedent for league-wide issues with officiating and them dictating and changing the outcome of games. And the NFL, we have precedent that they've responded to this before. Go back to 2012. Officials go on strike. The NFL says bet. The NFL says we're not going to pay what you want to be paid. We think that we are going to make the financial bet that we can bring in other people that can do your job as well as you. We all remember that, right? 2012, it was a great time. We all remember specifically that game in Green Bay, the Hail Mary, what happened at the end of that, and that game on Monday night in primetime, millions of people watching. The NFL said, enough is enough. We're going to pay you guys. We're going to bring in more refs. We're going to give you the things that you want. We're going to make sure that you're trained better. We're going to do things to make sure that the officiating for our product is better than what has been put on the field for these first handful of weeks. And they did this before gambling was even involved. Now there's even not only more eyes on the sport, there's more actual money and there's more actual impact from the officiating and the impact of these games. It's no longer just the individual result of the team, win, loss, etc. There's now millions of dollars wrapped into each and every single one of these games and these decisions and these calls. And so, again, there is complaining that is just you're being a child and you need to get over it. And then there is this thing that we can all see week after week after week. And I'm not, it's not my picture. I'm not just saying it's the Chiefs, even though it seems to happen with them a lot. But we're seeing multiple games. Sam Darnold ripped down by his face mask. The Rams defender literally putting his hand on his helmet and going, oh my gosh, I screwed up. And the ref that's less than a yard away from going, well, I ain't see it. Again, despite the meme, not just saying it's them, but in the game yesterday, Denver is holding down Kansas City. Kansas City can't get any offense established in the first half, and then it's a third down call. Denver gets a sack. The entire play takes maybe 3 seconds because Benito's there so fast, and then suddenly there's a flag, and now it's illegal contact from a safety 15 yards down the field on a play that took 3 seconds, that they barely engaged with each other. Again, I'm not here just to complain on behalf of one team, or I'm not here just to complain on behalf of one particular incident. You can go up and down the line. There is bad officiating across the NFL. And again, the NFL is in a place where it has no true peer in terms of its entertainment. It has no true peer in terms of another sport being as popular as it is right now. But take it from Major League Baseball, who at one point was in this position. Take it from the NBA, who at one point was in this position. You start to have enough low-quality teams, and then you have so people don't even want to watch those teams. And then you have low-quality officiating in the games people want to watch. And some of your biggest takeaways week after week aren't the great plays being made by the great players. A lot of your takeaways week after week are the horrible calls and the missed calls and how bad the officiating is. And again, for everybody that just wants to say, oh, you're just being mad at the refs, oh, you're just complaining, there is a precedent. The NFL in 2012, we're not going to pay you. They said, we will pay someone else your money because we think your job is doable by somebody else for at a value that we want to accept. In the NFL, after several weeks of it screwing up the product they put on TV, the NFL said, okay, we need to pay you guys. Okay, we need to make this better. Okay, we need to improve the product that is being put out on the field, because eventually this will lead to less people watching the game. The NFL, one of its current issues it has to deal with is people streaming the games. The NFL doesn't get a dime for people illegally streaming games. They want people to pay for these. Have you seen how much Sunday Ticket is? They want people to buy those. They want people to actually go buy tickets for the actual games. That is all part of their revenue stream. And you can't keep letting something like bad officiating get in the way of what is easily the most marketable sport, of what is easily the biggest sport, of what is easily just the biggest growing business in America over the last decade and a half. The NFL is running numbers around its competition. It has no real competition anymore. But you're going to let officials who sit there and, throw a flag here, a flag there. And again, I'm not calling for everything to be called. No one wants to watch a football game. If you just watch the offensive defensive line, you could call holding probably 20, 30 times a game. Nobody wants that. I'm aware there are certain things you got to swallow the whistle. No one wants, besides the obvious, the late game, end of game pass interference call. Nobody wants to be quote unquote officiated to the letter of the law. We understand there's some push and pull here, but it can't be this flagrantly bad. And again, I'm going to take you back to 2012. They have already acknowledged this once in their history. You also, NFL, and this is a little bit of my own bitching, and maybe this is childish, you can't let a story come out, whether it's true or not, that referees are doing meet and greets with Taylor Swift prior to the game. Because I don't care what happens in the game. I don't care what happens. They could throw no flags. They could throw 1,000 flags. That's bad publicity. You cannot let it come out that referees for a team that is already, you should be talking about the greatness of the Kansas City dynasty, and every single game we're talking about weird calls, or every single time we're talking about bad calls. You can't let a story come out about the ref doing a meet and greet and being on FaceTime and trying to get tickets. That's just an awful look. Just flat out. That's just an awful look. The Chiefs won the game. Congrats to them. They blocked the field goal. Play was made. Congrats to them. But that's an awful look. Transitioning from there, now remember, we talked about this last week, or on Sunday, I'm sorry. Brian Windhorst talked about the NBA media and its struggles to create storylines with a lot of the current talent of players. Some of that has to do with these European guys. It's hard to push them forward because they're not as actively involved in the American media. They're not here on American soil as often, and so when they go out and do their own thing, it's hard to pump up Jokic as a story when he wants to go play with horses. And I'm not trying to discredit Jokic. I'm not even trying to discredit the media. That's just a hard case to do. So I want to take the time every single day this week, and potentially even next week, depending on where this goes, we are going to talk about the actual good NBA storylines that exist. And one of them that I think should be absolutely commended is the dynasty to be in the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, I'm saying dynasty to be because that's how we associate all these teams that have long-time success. And I believe wholeheartedly that the Oklahoma City Thunder, I'm not going to do ring counting for them. I'm not going to discuss, how long are they going to be in contention to be a championship team. But the talent that has been accumulated on this roster is clearly set up to win long-term. SGA, Chet Holmgren, the Williams brothers. And what's the most impressive thing about this dynasty is it's not just talent-based. Teams are getting smarter and smarter. General managers are getting smarter and smarter. And they are not only building championship rosters for today, they are building rosters long-term, which is why the Oklahoma City Thunder, this is 10,000% a Sam Presti story more than it is an SGA or Chet Holmgren story or whoever they draft. Remember, the Oklahoma City Thunder were jokes for about 2.5 years because they had Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, James Harden, couldn't win a title. How can you not win a title with those guys? Then they regroup with a post-KD, Russell Westbrook, Paul George. Paul George has an MVP-ish season. Russell Westbrook obviously has the MVP season, all the triple-doubles, and they can't make it out of the first round. And then they just say, you know what? We tried it. It didn't work. Move everybody off. Trade Paul George to the LA Clippers, get SGA in that trade, and then Sam Presti does the joke. He's got 37 draft picks from this year's draft to in 10 years. He's going to draft, someone's currently playing in the league. He's going to draft their grandson. He's accumulated so many draft picks. But this is how you build sustained success. The Oklahoma City Thunder are the scariest team in the Western Conference, not just because of what they possess right now. They have draft picks and capital that exceeds every other team in the league by twofold, threefold. Some teams, infinite. Some teams have almost no draft picks or any control of their drafting situation, the Nets and the Lakers, for several more years. And the Thunder have still, while they're at the peak of some of this talent being assembled on the roster, they still have 3, 4, 5 first-round picks. Like, what they are building in OKC is not just meant to deal with the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic. It's meant to deal with, we all know, the 7'5" alien in San Antonio. Once they get talent there, that's going to be a team that's going to be able to compete for titles. And once they start being able to compete for titles, that's a team that the Thunder are going to be ready for because they're going to have several first-round picks in there. Again, the Clippers, who, yes, James Harden is riding the ship, and James Harden is having, to his credit, a really good season for where he's at this stage of his career. But if the Clippers flame out because Kawhi's not healthy and James Harden can't play 82 games, the Thunder have their first-round pick. That means that could potentially be a top 5 pick. That's more draft capital. That's more great players adding to the Thunder. They're not just trying to compete with Jason Tatum. They're trying to compete with the next set of superstars. What's happening in Houston, if they start to get those doors rolling, can they get all of their young guys to compete? That's who OKC is also competing with. They're not just competing with the modern-day version of the Cavs, who, even though they're 11-0, no one seems to care. And I'll be honest, I'm not overly impressed, but you have to give them their credit for being 11-0. But no one's looking at the Cavs as a true title contender. What OKC is doing, what Sam Presti is doing, despite all the jokes, despite all the backlash, he is shown time and time again his ability to get draft capital, his ability to draft well, his ability to put talent into that building. This is not a team that is just good and or great this year, last year, or next year. They have a true 10-year plan. They have a true direction of the franchise. And they're not just hitting the button. A lot of teams, when they get a guy like an SGA, I root for the Pelicans. New Orleans did this multiple times. Got Anthony Davis, trade well out of draft capital, get a Drew Holiday, get this player, sign this guy, because he's so good right now. We don't know if we're ever going to get this chance. That is a sign of desperation. Hate to say it about Pelicans, but that is a sign of desperation. When you are a team when you can be calm, confident. You've already had Kevin Durant. You've already had Paul George. You've already had Russell Westbrook. You've had these all-time elite talents. You're not worried about pressing the button. Let me trade 5, 6, 7 picks so I can go get this guy right now. Let me go mortgage my future so I can bring another superstar. No, you draft Chet Holmgren. He's out his rookie year. Okay, that's fine. We don't need you this year. Chet, sit out. Get your surgery. Do what you need to do. Bring him back as a sophomore, technically a rookie player. See what he does. He's maturing. He gets stronger. You got the Williams brothers. Again, you have SGA as your true star centerpiece. but they're doing this organizationally and fundamentally better than the other 29 teams in the league. You could argue better than anybody currently, because they have figured out how to draft well, how to bring in talent, and they're still accruing draft capital. So the OKC Thunder, this is a marvelous story. It should be talked about more. These are one of those things that, you know, as Giannis is declining and Embiid's health can't stay serious, like, those are guys who are, unfortunately, they were so a part of that ring culture of win a ring now or your career is considered a failure. Imagine if they had an organization like OKC that looked out for just the long-term growth of the franchise. What if Embiid's team was constantly drafting guys, and instead of going out and trading for these other superstars, getting James Harden, now going out and acquiring Paul George, what if they were actually building up their own, acquiring capital? The same thing with Giannis. They go out and they trade Drew. And maybe you think it's worth it if you win a title. That's fine. But the reality is, look where Giannis and the Bucks are as we currently stand in 2024, and look where SGA and the Oklahoma City Thunder are. And it's not just, well, he's got a ring, so it's worth it. The Lakers got a ring. And now the Lakers have old LeBron James, who's still great, but he's old. Anthony Davis, who we'll get into the ridiculousness of him being the MVP frontrunner when they have a losing record. Look at the position those franchises are in versus the position Oklahoma City is in. So if we want to champion basketball storylines, if we want to champion teams doing it the correct way, if we want to just champion good basketball, then you've got to commend what the Oklahoma City Thunder are doing. And I'm someone who's been critical of the Thunder. I've been critical of SGA because he plays that James Harden, in my opinion, 3-ball foul merchant kind of style where I'm not the biggest fan of, but it doesn't matter if I'm a big fan or not. The fact is they are producing results, getting results, and what they are doing should be 1,000% commended. The Oklahoma City Thunder, the next dynasty of the NBA, and let's see how long it goes. Man, there's a lot to talk about today. A team who I think we all have to come to grips with that we overrated, and it's unfortunate, but it happens from time to time. Tony is going to stop by, as well as the NBA player who is unironically the perfect 2K player, even though he's got the weirdest build of all time. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. their owner is impatient, crazy, and irrational. Because I like Shane Steichen as a head coach. I do. I'm not as familiar with the general manager. I'm not going to really quote, how good or bad he is. He has gotten guys like a Quentin Nelson. If Anthony Richardson did develop, he's gotten a Michael Pittman. So he's, I believe, with who the overall talent on the roster, general manager, good. Good enough at least. Especially when you have someone like Shane Steichen as your head coach. But I do firmly believe the decision to bench Anthony Richardson was a call from Jim Irsay, who wants to be back in the Peyton Manning era where he's winning 10, 11, 12 games every single year. His quarterback's throwing for 4,000 yards. He has one of the best offenses, one of the best teams in the National Football League. He wants to go back to Andrew Luck those first couple of years, winning 11-plus games, making the playoffs. That's what he believes. He believes that the Indianapolis Colts are one of the best franchises in sports, not just that they were lucky to get two supremely talented quarterbacks. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Thank you for joining in today. Tony's going to be stopping by here momentarily. Before we get him, though, it's important that we admit when we're wrong. I do this every Monday, HardRight, HardLeft later in the show. But it's important we admit when we're wrong. And I think as a community, we need to admit we're wrong. But before I put the pressure on anybody else, I'll admit I was wrong. But I think a lot of you felt the same. I think it's time to admit that we overrated the Houston Texans. Now, I still like long-term. I still obviously like C.J. Stroud. I still like DeMeco Ryans. I still like Nico Collins. I think there's still Derek Stingley. There is personnel here that I think we all still really like, and I personally really like. Again, I'm trying to keep this just me. I do think, however, as much as we like their roster and as much as we like these certain pieces, we did accelerate them to a place they probably weren't meant to be at yet. So the Houston Texans, a lot of people had as potentially going to the Super Bowl or entering that conversation to give Kansas City a run for its money, joining the Baltimores, joining the Cincinnatis, joining the top tier of the AFC. And you could say what you want about that game last night. Great teams, the upper echelon teams don't lose when they force 5 interceptions from the other quarterback. They don't allow them to score 19 unanswered points when they get 5 interceptions from the other quarterback. Look, again, we all like CJ. I love CJ. We all like DeMeco Ryans. I love DeMeco. We all like Nico Collins, even though he's hurt. We all like Derek Stingley. But the reality is right now with the Houston Texans, they are not playing well. They are not of the upper echelon team in the AFC. And right now, I'm starting to wonder, are they a product of team gets good playing last place schedule? So the Houston Texans last year went 10-7. 10-7, and CJ was the rookie of the year, and we all remember how incredible that feeling was. But that was on a last place schedule. That's why, they picked number 2 the previous year. So they're playing all the worst teams they could play. They were playing all the 4th place teams. And then if you break it down even more, again, they went 10-7. They went 4-2 in the division. 4-2 in the division. So that means 6-5 against the rest of the league. Which, again, on a 4th place schedule, you're going 6-5 against the bottom of the NFL. The worst teams in the NFL, you're going 6-5 against. And then we elevated them to, now they're one of the big boys. Again, this normally takes time, and this is part of our problem, and this is my problem. I had them rated very high. I think I've had them as high in my power rankings as the 4th best team in the NFL. I just love what CJ represents long term because in my opinion, he's a clear, no doubt franchise quarterback. I like what DeMeco Ryans represents long term. I think he's the right head coach for them. But 6-5, and that's against the worst teams in the NFL, 4-2 in your division, and your division's not great. The Jaguars, the Colts, the Titans, and I know, the Jaguars and the Colts both went 9-8 last year, but the Jaguars fell apart the second half of the year, and that's when you beat them. The Colts were on, they play out 4 or 5 different quarterbacks last year. So even though their records were better, those weren't great teams. And again, 4-2 in a weak division, 6-5 against the 4th place teams. And we thought that's who's going to be on the upper echelon in that AFC Conference Championship type of area. The Texans weren't ready for it yet. Again, CJ long term, there's not probably 5 guys I want more than him long term. DeMeco Ryans is a head coach. I think can absolutely coach his ass off. And this team will look different once they get Nico Collins back. I think Nico Collins is a huge part of their team. It's similar to the effect A.J. Brown has on Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. But even in Philadelphia, we acknowledge that's a supremely talented team and a supremely talented roster. We just don't like their head coach, and we acknowledge that, which is why a lot of people have pulled back some of their love for Philadelphia because no one thinks Nick Sirianni is a great head coach. And so with that same kind of logic, we then have to assess the Houston Texans and go, look, they're good. They're not great. They're clearly good because they beat up bad teams. But when it comes time to play other good teams or great teams, they don't look good. They don't look great. They don't look like they're in the same class. Again, they got the win against in Sunday night, week 2, I believe it was against the Bears. And we thought the Bears were better than they were because then immediately after that, Caleb Williams and the Bears were on a hot streak. And now we see where the Bears are as things currently stand. We're like, okay, that's not one of the better teams in the NFL. They played the Lions. You just can't lose games in which you throw 5 interceptions when the other team throws 5 interceptions. Like, that's just not a game that you're supposed to lose. And so I'll take it on the chin, take it on the head. I thought the Texans were going to be better. I thought this was just going to keep going up, up, and up. And I think we need to calm down a little. Now, they're still going to win the division because their division's awful. The Colts aren't very good. The Titans are terrible. And the Jaguars have fallen apart. So they're still going to win this division. But I no longer think it is going to be in a way that we thought coming into the season. Like they are, when I was doing my check-in point yesterday about where teams are at the halfway point, I think the Texans will still end up where I think they will be, but I don't think they'll be as good when they get there. And with that, I'm about to give you Will's intro. And with that, I got to alternate. And with that, the richest man y'all will never meet, Tony, is in the building. How you doing, man?
What's up, man?
So, obviously, Ravens played on Thursday. I want to get some feedback because, Ravens played the Bengals, and every single person you go to, like pretty much any news outlet, ESPN, FS1, whoever you go to for your sports take, everybody was basically, it was a ceremonious how great Lamar is, how great the Ravens are. It was good vibes everywhere. Now, anybody that texted you during Ravens game, you were not all good vibes during this game. Which is great because it's how you know someone who watches them on a week-to-week basis versus the national media. And the national media, despite what they don't let them lie to y'all, they can't watch every single game intently. And so I'm curious. I want to take away. Obviously, Lamar had a great performance. The Ravens scored 35 points. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase do what they do. But what was your takeaway from that 35-34 game?
The obvious. I mean, I don't really have any takes where it's like, if you watch football every weekend that you can't see it, it's like, you know, the secondary isn't playing well. I'm not going to say this. I'm not going to say the secondary is bad because it's just too much talent on the back end, but they're just not playing well. And a lot, some of that is the lack of communication on the players' part. Some of that is the play calling by the coaching staff. It's a big mix there that I think a lot of blame can go around. But yeah, the secondary's got to play better for sure. They won't go to where they're capable of going with the secondary playing the way it's playing. And offensively, you know, it's the best offense in the game. You know, I would said that going into that night and leaving that night, it only confirmed what I knew is that, you know, when the offense is rolling, it can't be stopped in any way. And when you look at how they were able to play, and not only how they were able to play, but who was making the plays, it wasn't just a Derrick Henry night. It wasn't just a Zay Flowers night. It wasn't just a Mark Andrews night. It was, you know, Tylan Wallace with a big game-changing, you know, 80-plus yard catch and run. It was big third down conversions from Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, and you know, big plays downfield from Nelson Aguilar, stuff like that. Just being versatile with the offense, having to figure out who's going to kill us this week and trying to account for it, and knowing that you're playing 11 on 11. You're not playing 10 guys and a quarterback. You are playing 11 football players on 11 football players, and that's always going to make it tough.
No, that's valid. The Ravens are starting to get, there's a handful of teams. I kind of mentioned this last week. When you start taking like all time, you get to take all time rosters from each team's like the best quarterback they've ever had, best tight end, etc. The Ravens are starting to move into a scary space. If you look at this offense versus, we all know the 2000s Ravens defense. Out, that's an argument for either the best or second best defense all time. And now as they start to get Lamar and this iteration of the Ravens, like you could build an all time scary roster. I do want to ask. So I had texted you and I said, hey, if the Ravens go all the way, because I believe it's Harbaugh's got 1 year left on his deal, and I said, would you extend Harbaugh if they won a Super Bowl? And your response was, in no world can you extend John Harbaugh,
Can't
even if
do it.
he wins a championship. Let's say it's 1 year left on the deal, so you have this year obviously and next year. He wins a title either of those 2 years. Now, do you think it's realistic they don't re-sign him, or are you just adamant on the fact of regardless of result, you need to get somebody new in there?
If he wins the championship, he'll definitely be extended as the Ravens coach, and I don't think anyone would be happy about it. But that's just the nature of how Steve Bisciotti runs the team and how the Ravens want to operate. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said in the text, the fear of a the fear of a super low, I don't want to say super low because you got Lamar Jackson, but the fear of a low floor compared to the possibility of an endless ceiling, it does not, it's not a plus to owners like Steve Bisciotti or the Rooneys in Pittsburgh. Like when you have these long tenure coaches who have had success to an extent, not sustained success to the level of the rosters they've had, you say, okay, this is where we're at, and we're just going to be here until we get over that point. And that's fine to do, but it can be frustrating for fans. So, if they don't win the Super Bowl, John Harbaugh absolutely will not be the coach after his contract is up, or even before his contract is up, if he has 1 year after this. But if they're able to win the Super Bowl, he'll be extended. He'll be extended if he still wants to coach. Now, if they win the Super Bowl and he doesn't want to coach anymore, and he's feel like he's done all he can, then that's that. But I don't see that in him
Mm-hmm.
wanting to hang it up at this point, especially with Jim back in the league and that complex of just wanting to prove something. I don't think he wants to hang it up, especially like I said, especially with Jim back in the NFL. I feel like he wants to just keep going, and that's fine. He's still capable. It's not as though he's not capable of still going. He's valuable to he he's valuable to any 30 teams, as far as being a head coach from the top of the top to the lowest of the low. He's a valuable head coach to have. And this is not to say he's not valuable to the Ravens. It's just time. Everybody can see it, everybody knows it. So but yeah, I just don't think you can extend him regardless.
No, that's valid. Um, One more Raven specific question. Do the Steelers finally scare you?
No. Like no. I'm not like I looked at the schedule and just now I'm not going to dismiss the devil magic. That's just the reality. It's
You telling
it's
me?
30 teams in the league. Two have devil magic over them. It's the Steelers and the Chiefs. So it's like but
Telling
I'm
me.
not going to dismiss that. But like they're not that good. Like the defense is great. The defense is great. Do not get me wrong. But you watch the teams they've beat. The teams that the defense have been able to dominate are not great teams. They're not great offenses. They caught Atlanta at a good time. You watch Atlanta yesterday, like they're still kind of they go through the motions themselves, even though
Hmm.
they're an offense that can put up points. Um, they they let up 27 yesterday. Now some of that's over turnovers and things like that. Jaden Daniels didn't play necessarily great football, but he was really good given the circumstance of going against that defense and that coach as a rookie quarterback.
Hmm.
They're playing the MVP next week. Quarterback that they've had great success against in the few times that they've played them, because the Ravens have not had much success versus the Steelers over the last few seasons, but a lot of that is skewed because I think since 2019 the Steelers have played Lamar 3 times. So it's not really what it looks like. Like they've benefited from a lot of Robert Griffin and Tyler Huntley and a lot of Robert Griffin and Tyler Huntley time. So it's like I don't put too much stock into that. I think that it's going to be a competitive game because they're going to Pittsburgh next week. It's always tough to play them there.
Hmm.
JJ, I mean, TJ Watt is I guess he's like immune to offside penalties. So that's that, because he does it every game, but they never get called. I don't know how it works. I don't know how it works, but
Man,
you know.
don't talk about penalties, bro. It's a bad week
So
for penalties and devil magic because I'm still trying to
so
figure out where the illegal contact is. I'm still
so
trying to figure out.
so I don't think. Yeah, they don't scare me though. And their schedule is very very. It's hilariously funny on the back end. They play the Eagles, Chiefs, and all their division games for the rest of the season. It's very funny how that breakout for them.
It's weird. They did that too. The NFL tried to do it. This is my next question, and I'm going to bring this up with Will again too. But Will's obviously there's more sensitivity when talking about your own team. Um, I went off earlier in the show. I'm like this idea fans are like, what is a penalty versus what's not? There's a handful of like transcendent players who do things that it does look weird at first glance. We do think it's a penalty, and then we kind of all catch on. Like to your offside point, like Von Miller might be the greatest ever at like jumping at the perfect snap of the ball.
Hmm.
And originally, early in his career, everybody's like, "Oh, he's offside, he's offsides." And then you start like actually looking at like to the second tee, like he just had an all-time jump. Then there's dudes who are like, "Oh, I just did what Von did." It's like, nah, that's kind of unique just to him. A lot of y'all just offsides are cheating.
Right.
Like it's not like there's offensive tackles who do get off at the start of the
We not
ball.
even going to talk about Jawan Taylor.
Dog, he
Like
ran into the motion
we
man. Like how
not
you
even
not
going to talk
how
about
you run into
Jawan
the
Taylor.
motion man and teams like, no, that always happens. Like, no, it does. Anyway, um, I did want to ask you as a USC fan, and Will obviously just wants to fire every person that works for the Chicago Bears. Will would fire the owner. Um, in your opinion, what is the problem in Chicago right now, and how much of it, if you were to give an actual percentage blame, how much of it is on Caleb or on the players versus on the coaches?
And watching them in the times I have watched them, I haven't watched every game like with in detail, but like in the games that I have watched them from the London game, the Commanders game, the Colts game, Houston, like in the games I've watched them, it's just and this goes back to last season. It's just Matt Eberflus is not a good head coach. That is just the reality of the matter. He is not a good head coach. Shane Waldron is not the right offensive coordinator for this team. He was not a great offensive coordinator. At the end of his Seattle run, he's not a good offensive coordinator for what they have. This is a team that should be more. They obviously have set it up to run a lot of spread, a lot of 11 personnel. I don't know if that's necessarily what they should be doing, but that's the personnel they have because you drafted Rome, re-extended DJ, and you traded for Keenan Allen, so you're in that spot. Um, Caleb runs no RPO. He runs no RPO, and it's one of the biggest mistakes that they do because not only are you limiting his ability as a player, you're stopping him from being able to play 11 on 11. His ability to run the ball as a relatively more stout quarterback and his with a lower, larger frame, it opens up a lot more for your offense because you have DeAndre Swift, who's a shiftier running back who carries a little bit of power, but more shifty, like in that LaShawn McCoy vein. So you stop that part of your run game. The pass concept isn't anything that's super dynamic because you have essentially a great route runner, Keenan Allen. You have the big threat in Rome who's better getting vertical, and you have DJ Moore who's also probably better at getting vertical than underneath in short stuff. With that, it needs to be a little bit more diverse. Cole Kmet isn't used as much as he should. He could be a top 5 tight end if utilized much better. Play action isn't what it should be, and we're at a point in the NFL where I don't know why more coaches just don't take what worked in college because the games are so much more similar than they are different compared to 10, 15 years ago. And
100%.
what worked for Caleb at SC over the past 2 seasons and in his Oklahoma stint was RPO, play action, getting a good run game behind him to open up the deep shots. He can make every throw. He can make every throw you want. You can still play spread and run out of that, but using him as an RPO quarterback in spread, it opens up so much more open windows for receivers. Like I just think it's a malpractice of coaching what's going on. And that's not to mention the offensive line already isn't that good. What's the medicine for a bad offensive line? Being able to run the football and play action, and they don't do it.
No, 1,000%. I wouldn't. When you brought up the RPO comment yesterday, that made me think. I'm like, because obviously O line is there, and again for the talent, and I do think Chicago has talent. No team is perfect, even the great teams. You get these random years where like there's maybe a year like a couple years ago, the Niners damn near had everything, and then you start to peel pieces away. The Bears' offensive line was going to be the weakest part, even if this season was going well. And so when you can do things like that to either trick the defense to where pass rushers, like they're just teeing off, like they're just guys who are in the backfield immediately. And if your offensive line's not already good, it's up to the play calling to just hey, can you get that extra second? Um, I'll ask about him in a second, but like even Bo, who's people say what you want, obviously there's a talent disparity there, but even Bo doing a play action RPO type looks, guys can't just rush immediately. And so that if you're worried about a speed rush because you have two Denver ass power tackles, not really quick tackles, that extra second is huge for them. It lets them get their hands on guys. It opens up stuff in the run game, and that's where the coaching has to come into. Your coaching has to take care of like the bad parts of your team, especially like the Bears have good enough receivers, they have good enough tight ends, they're good at skill positions, like so the coaching needs to take care of the bad part of your football team. Speaking of that, and we don't have to be here long. 10 games into his NFL career. Now, there's a bunch of analysts who had different opinions and different takes, and everyone basically came to the same conclusion, which was there was one clear overreach in the first round at quarterback. I don't know if anyone gave me as definitive an opinion as Tony, which was about 5 seconds after the Broncos selected Bo Nix. He apologized to me, told me he was felt bad for me, and told me how he was trash. Now I'm not going to ask you to totally to referendum that. It's only 10 games, but do you feel like there is a chance you could be wrong 10 games into Bo Nix's career?
No, not really. Because I said that for the simple fact that he's done what he's always done. When the competition is at a level, he looks great and he's getting the ball out quick and he's able to make plays with his legs. He's been able to do that since 2018 when he was a freshman, 19, something like that. When it's bad, it's very bad. We saw that against the Jets in the rain. We saw that. I don't want to say the second half of yesterday because it was just a weird game, but the you see when it kind of gets stifled a little bit and the offense isn't able to move as it is in the first half. So it's like I've never thought that Bo Nix was great. I've never thought that he was just the worst of the worst. I just don't think he's good in the sense of like taking him to be your franchise starting quarterback. To take him in the first round, he didn't hold first round value. I seen it. I seen what it could look like when it's bad. What it looks like when it's bad does it outweighs what it looks like when it's good, because what it looks like when it's good, you could have gotten round 3.
No, so my current opinion is take out like the obviously in the moment. Trust me, when he made the throw, third down, avoiding the rush, which Rush got sacked 50 sometimes last year and took a bunch of bad sacks. So I'm right now dealing. I'm just coming off from a fan's point of view where I don't even know what the fuck good quarterback play is supposed to look like after the past 2 years. But the throw, third down, step up in the pocket on the run to Cortland Sutton, which is basically the play that should have won the game for Denver yesterday. I was hyped to sell that at that point. Yeah, he could have been the franchise. I think it could have been Elway in '87. But there is clear signs. You can see now his feet are getting better, but you could go through any of his games. There's like 2 or 3 throws a game where you do like, okay, well, I watched some Tebow before. I've been down this road. The bad does look really bad. And that's why right now I think Sean Payton, he's not going to get votes for it, but Sean Payton's doing one of the best coaching jobs in the NFL. Last thing here before we get you out, we'll switch over to the basketball a little bit. You've been discussing the Celtics in a way where you're not scared of any team in the Eastern Conference. I'm not even asking about the Cavs. I don't think anyone's scared about the Cavs being 11-0, which is unfortunately a shame, but it is what it is. If I said one team or one player, could I at least interest you in that if the Celtics played the Nuggets in the NBA Finals, that's a series that would worry you?
Yeah. Just because they don't have anything. They don't have anyone to throw at Jokic to make it tough for him. He can pretty much get whatever he wants in that series. Now they have to come back down on the other end and obviously guard and things like that. And
Mhm.
it can't be a situation where let him get 40. If he wants to get 40, let him get 40. Like, who gives a shit? It can't be 40, 15, and 15 or something stupid like that. The Jokic thing is a problem and the potential, I would say potential, in the potential final series, if you're getting Jokic 25, 15, 12 plus Jamal Murray 20 plus 20 from Michael Porter Jr. or 18 from Michael, just the other people
Mhm.
contributing to that. If Tito, Jermaine, and fucking Randy are out there, playing the hits too, that's a problem. Michael can do what he want to do. It is what it is. But you can't let them you can't let other guys get off against you like that. But I mean I don't think it'll come to that. I don't see the Nuggets making the finals over Minnesota or Oklahoma City if it gets to that point. Um, so I don't really foresee like a Celtics Nuggets finals the way I probably did a year ago.
Mhm.
So yeah, but yeah, it would definitely worry me. It would definitely be a worry for sure.
No, I never thought, and this is, and I'm not trying to diminish. It's just it's how crazy like, and Jokic is starting to enter like whatever that tier of like rarefied air where forget lists. Like just when you say a certain player's name and it holds like all time weight. Like when you talk about like Hakeem, you talk about Shaq during his prime, you talking about Kobe, Bron, maybe a little less of like Bird, Magic. Jokic is starting to get to that point because I never thought post seeing LeBron James, you'd like ever looking at the player and be like, well, you just hope you hold them to like 25, 15, and 12. Like that was shit only like prime LeBron was doing. I'm like, yo, this man is just he doesn't like to talk. He doesn't do like he's horrible for the NBA from a ratings and media perspective because what we're currently seeing media wise is like this is what it would look like if Tim Duncan was the biggest star in the league during the run because the Spurs finals just didn't do numbers and the Spurs were a boring team. They just won 50 games a year. And I'm like, Jokic is getting into some like, and he's quick because he passed up. I thought Giannis was going to get there. Giannis is falling back. I thought, I know a lot of people had Embiid going on that track. Embiid's obviously falling back. Like,
Very funny people who have that. Very unserious people.
hey man, 6 years ago, man, you and Will kept talking about Embiid was Hakeem 2.0.
But I always have said he was more skilled than Giannis. I've always said that. That
That's
is still true.
that's
But he just does not play basketball. And it's nothing I can do about that.
that's ain't nobody's playing basketball no more.
That's fair.
Everybody injured, man. The NBA is going through a rough time. And I appreciate you as always, man. We're gonna catch back up next week.
See you, man.
Hard left in this one. I don't even think I'm necessarily wrong, just in terms of what happened on Sunday, but I think Sunday was the first time I thought this is actually a big issue, which the hard left is. I think I'm done defending John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh, Tony has been telling me for the last several weeks, has never been a great coach. He's just been a good coach, but a message that's dying out because he's been there for so long. And I've given some pushback on that. I do think John, in my opinion, mainly because of his success, has always been he's a really good head coach. And then obviously all these guys need players, right? Like John Harbaugh inherited Ray Lewis. He inherited Ed Reed. He got a young Joe Flacco who turned into a great quarterback. But I was watching the game on Sunday and I'm like, look, man, I'm all for being creative, especially in the goal line. Andy Reid has made that really popular. All these reverse gadget plays that specifically he's been able to pull off. But the reality is, why are we doing a direct snap to Derrick Henry on fourth down? The most dangerous, most effective play the entire NFL season has been Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry RPO. And you just take it out of Lamar's hands. You don't even fake it. You don't even give him the chance to make it seem like he could be involved in the play. You just totally remove him. Hard left in this. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate Tony again for joining us today. It is Monday. You know what that means because it is Monday. We always try to take the time to talk about what we were right about, what we were wrong about. And that's the time I go through all of my last week's takes and basically say, you know what? Hey, this is what I feel that I was the most right about and things that I got the most wrong. So, because you have to hold yourself accountable, right? You can't do this and not hold yourself accountable, in my opinion. You know, some people don't feel like it, but it is what it is. So, with that being said, let's end on a positive note. I want to do that. Okay, let's go with hard left. The thing that I was the most wrong about last week. So, to anybody that knows me and anyone that's ever listened, huge Bronco fan, which means I've spent the last 2 years of my life tormented by some of the worst quarterback play you've ever watched. And that was Russell Wilson in Denver. It was bad. It was hard to watch. It was awful. It was everything bad. It was bad all the way around, right? Like it was just awful. And took too many sacks, didn't win enough games, and even when they had the 5-game win streak, it felt like it was all Sean, very little of Russ. It felt like the less they let Russ do, the better it was. It was just it didn't work, right? And Russ, I've been consistent about this take. I don't think Russ should be. I think Russ is a Hall of Fame player if you look at the totality of his career, and I don't think you lose that because of those 2 years in Denver. I've never liked the idea that you could be kicked out of the Hall of Fame. So Russ still going to go to the Hall of Fame. Congrats. But I never thought Russ was going to play good football ever again. And combine that with the other thing that we're kind of doing a 2-for-1 here. The team I've never bought into all year, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh boy. So, look, here's the real problem. The Steelers, who I haven't bought into all year because I never thought they were going to get actually good enough quarterback play. I know the defense can be great. I know TJ Watt's a monster. I know all the stats saying. I know Mike Tomlin wins, and I know I'm already wrong about them finishing under 500. I know. But I never took them seriously. And I'm not even sure the team that they beat this week, I'm not even sure if I fully take Washington seriously, but you can't deny what Washington has done, especially from an offensive perspective. And while I don't think they're better than the Ravens, the Steelers are clearly better than I ever thought they were going to be at any point this season. And while I don't think Russ is back to being some great or elite quarterback, he is clearly playing better than I ever thought he would again. These are two things that I thought were both washed, about to fade out of the NFL, which was Mike Tomlin's streak, always finishing above 500. I thought that was about to go away this year. Russell Wilson, I thought, was never going to play good football again. I remember he was benched at the end of last year, and Denver was willing to eat $80 million just for him to not show up. To $80 million, just please leave the state of Colorado. And then he started the year off hurt, and Justin Fields won the locker room, and Justin Fields got off to the 4-2 start. Like, everything felt like it was supposed to be the end of Russell Wilson's career. And so, to that, I have to admit I'm wrong. Not that Russ is, playing like a top 5, top 10 quarterback, but Russ is playing well especially for this stage of his career. The offense for Pittsburgh finally looks alive, which it hasn't made, you could argue, has not looked this good since Ben Roethlisberger's been there, which is somewhat of a compliment. Also tells you how bad their offense has been since Big Ben retired. And the Steelers as a whole are it's just a machine, man. It might not be flashy. It might not be the prettiest thing in the world, but they just get it done. Now, if only we could admit that another team's doing that, but we think the other team, despite not as flashy, is significantly better. Neither here nor there, I guess, right? And so, but I got to give it up to them, man. The Steelers are playing much better football than I thought they ever could at this point in the season. Russ is playing much better football than I thought he ever would again. And I think this week they play the Ravens, and they've had success against Lamar. Like Tony was telling us, they've had success against Lamar. They've had success against the Ravens as a whole. I know some of that involves backup quarterbacks, but Lamar has a losing record to Pittsburgh. And if the Steelers win that game and they go up 2 on the Ravens, that potentially puts the division out of reach. Because unless the Steelers collapse, which at the moment I have no reason to believe they will, if you believe in the consistency that they've had these last 5-6 years, it's really hard to believe they could collapse. And getting a 2-game lead at this point in the season, that probably forces the Ravens to be a wild card team. And if you force the Ravens to be a wild card team, that even if you play them again in the playoffs, they have to come to Pittsburgh, and you potentially ruin their chance to win a Super Bowl if you force them to be a wild card team. We haven't had, since Eli and the Giants, teams just run through the NFC as a total wild card. Brady did it, but what Brady does is not a standard for any human on the planet. Tom Brady is the greatest player I've ever seen. He is an anomaly in every shape, form, aspect. So we're not counting Brady. But the ability, if the Steelers go this week, they beat the Ravens and they go up 2, that potentially destroys the Ravens season. And these are division rivals. They always play tough. And again, they have a winning record against Lamar. They have a winning record against the Ravens. So this is 1,000%. I was wrong. I would have never called this. I would have never thought that the Steelers could be this good again. I would have never thought that that Russell Wilson could be this good again. It hurts. It's another former quarterback who's playing well. He just can't play well in Denver. Shout out to Joe Flacco, who just does things. I mean, Joe Flacco's playing bad now, but he's played well for every team he's played post Ravens besides the Broncos. And I'm just like, I just want a mental health break, guys. That's all. Just somebody. It's okay. We have Bo Nix. He's the franchise now. And so, but I gotta give it to him. I was wrong. I want to admit I was wrong. Congrats to Russ. Congrats to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's our hard left. You guys are way better than I thought you ever could be or ever would be at any point during this NFL season. HardRight, and I don't normally take the time to gloat in this fashion. I think this is normally very cliche or cringy. This is much more of a Stephen A. Smith thing, or much more of a name your person on ESPN or FS1. But I've been right now for the last year and a half about the New York Jets. I never thought at any point, and not just the Jets, I'm going to kind of break this down for 2 levels. We did a 2-for-1 for HardLeft, and we did a 2-for-1 for HardRight. I never thought the Jets, even when they got Aaron Rodgers, injury or not, were going to be this juggernaut-esque team. I like Breece Hall. I like Garrett Wilson. I don't think either of them are true game-changing difference makers. I know the stats. Garrett Wilson was leading the league in receptions, but I never viewed either of them in that category. And the defense was obviously really good, but I never thought they had a defense that was just outright going to carry a team for 16, 17 games. Obviously last year they got essentially what we know now to be the excuse of, well, Aaron Rodgers was hurt, so you can't hold it against him. When the reality is they're just not good. And the Aaron Rodgers here this year, they've had everyone healthy. They bring in Devontae Adams. Still not good. Bring in Hassan Reddick. I know he didn't play to start the season, but that's on them too. They're just not a good football team. And this is now 2 years of data. This Aaron Rodgers experiment, which is now, again, everybody loved Tom Brady when he went to Tampa and he won a Super Bowl. Everybody loved Matt Stafford who went to LA and won a title. But those franchises were maybe not historically all time, but they were well run and much better run than what the current version of the Jets are, because now the Jets aren't just bad. Aaron's old. You're in bad cap space. You have players regressing. We're going to talk one of them here in a second. You're not just having a losing season. You are going to be in a rock bottom scenario when it comes to the NFL. The Rams did it in a way with Matt Stafford where they basically ate it for a year, and now they're back. Now they've had a bunch of injuries, but they're basically back to being a competitive, good football team. That was with mortgaging a bunch of stuff for Matt Stafford. The Bucs, again, were essentially going to eat it for a year. They kind of struck gold with Baker, and they're back to already being a competitive team. Are they back to being are those franchises back to being a Super Bowl winning team? No, but they are back to being a good, competitive playoff team, and they're going to be able to stay there because organizationally, they're well run. They plan smart, good GMs, good coaches. The Jets right now, no good coaches left on the roster. Saleh was probably the best coach we had on the roster. Now the defense has been even worse since he's been fired. Woody Johnson's one of the worst owners in sports. And do we believe in the general manager? No. And the second part of the Jets' downfall that I am taking a little too much pride in talking about is, well, I guess according to Jets Twitter, we're no longer calling him Sauce. We are now calling him Ahmad Gardner because that's his actual name. And I was in this conversation and debate for the last 2 years of who's the best corner in football. I, of course, said the correct answer in Patrick Surtain, PS2, and everybody told me, no, it's Sauce Gardner. And I said, what's going to happen if Sauce isn't allowed to literally just wrestle and fight guys down the field, hold, do all these excessive things? And I was firm on that. I thought that he got away with the most things that would get penalized. I think he got away with more than any other corner I've seen in a long time. And because of that, he's getting away with us those calls. Guys are picking on to what he's doing, and he has had outright a season from hell. Now, is he a bad player? No. Is he a cuttable player? They're not going to extend him? No. He is still a really good corner, but that's the kind of conversation he needs to be in. He's just a really good corner. He was almost media pushed into this. He's the first guy with 2 All-Pros as a rookie and a second-year player since I think it was him, Dion, and Micah Parsons. And I'm like, he's like, are we watching the same game? That's not who he is. He's not in this class where he has separated himself from every other corner in the game. And that's how people were talking about him and viewing him. And so the Jets, again, I was never high on Post Rodgers. That hasn't worked out at all. Guys are regressing. Guys aren't getting better. Garrett Wilson's the only one who's still having a what you would have hoped kind of season from him. Breece Hall's not playing as well. Ahmad Gardner's not playing as well. You're about to lose a bunch of guys to free agency because you went all in for this push with Aaron Rodgers, and you're going to be in a similar situation to what Denver was in, and that is a lot of dead cap. If depending on what happens with Rodgers, now Rodgers might retire, and that might save them from the dead cap belt that Denver had. But if you can't nail your next quarterback pick, you are basically going to, the guys that are good right now are no longer going to be good by the time your quarterback gets good. You're not going to have, we might have already seen Sauce Gardner's prime. We might have already seen Quinnen Williams' prime. And if you can't get another functional quarterback in the next 2 to 3 years, even if those guys, the remainder of their prime isn't going to be with the Jets, and the remainder of their time being great NFL players isn't going to be with the Jets. The Jets are in a horrible situation from ownership to management to a coach. And what coach is going to want to go there? Again, I said this with Cleveland. If they fire Stefanski, what coach is going to willingly want to go there? What coaches? Some of these situations get so bad. Like, what coach, if you want to hire long term, is going to want to go to the New Orleans Saints? You're in cap hell. You don't have the answer at quarterback. Your best players are old and expensive. And so some of these situations just aren't salvageable. And if I'm a new coach, I'm not risking the length of my career and how I'm viewed on some of these franchises that don't have real solutions. And that's the territory the Jets are getting themselves into. So this is, again, it's kind of a gloat, but I don't think this was that hard to tell. And yet all I had the last 2 years is people telling me how good Sauce Gardner was, how great Garrett Wilson was, how great Breece Hall is. And I'm like, I don't see it. And 2 years later, I'm right. This is HardFoul Radio. When we come back, closing statement.